We recently added Custom Shaping 3.0, which gives GT more brains. Now we're adding more brawn. Today, we're happy to introduce the first ever performance-focused one wheel. Let's take a look. Introducing the all-new Onewheel GT S-Series. S-Series began as a secret project to create race boards for Race for the Rail. S-Series powertrain architecture is moving to significantly higher voltage. From XR to GT, we went from 63 to 75 volts, a 19% increase. Then from GT to S-Series, we made an even bigger leap, over 50% more voltage. A 113-volt drivetrain that delivers phenomenal torque at speed and efficiency from the higher voltage.
So you can come around a corner and
to handle the higher voltage. Both pushback and haptic buzz come in at a higher speed on GT S-Series, up to 25 miles per hour, depending on your digital shaping. Today, we're proud to introduce a new foot pad, the S-Series Lowboy foot pad. Our engineers worked to reduce the ride height and increase foot comfort. The result is almost 5mm lower ride height, more mellow concave for comfort and control. The tail has a bowl-shaped kick of over 24mm to let you brace in as you hit trails and features. With substantially more power, you may expect the board to get a bit heavier, while the S-Series actually shaves over 2 pounds off the weight of Onewheel GT. Onewheel GT S-Series also features 2 important new innovations that we recently released for GT. Custom Shaping 3.0, which lets you harness the power of the new drivetrain and give you the ride feel that you're looking for. And Haptic Buzz, which gives the rider additional feedback on the performance envelope of the board. With the higher voltage, the charger ecosystem is different, but the vast majority of other GT accessories are compatible with the GT S-Series. Onewheel GT S-Series is available now at onewheel.com for $3,200 and available with payments as low as $110 per month. The S-Series is lighter, lower, and factory tuned. More importantly, it's supercharged with an all-new powertrain. All in, this board rides like an absolute beast and puts a huge smile on your face. If you're a serious one-wheel rider, it's a must-have.
The rest of this video is going to cover my speculation and grievances with the board, so feel free to click off if you're not interested in hearing my opinion. Okay. To start, the Floatwheel ADV, which is their main corporate competition, has their flagship board clocking at half the price. And to be fair, the ADV is heavier and it doesn't have 113 volts. It comes in at 84 volts instead, but it still gets 34 miles of range, up to 36, I believe, on their ADV Pro. On the store page for the Onewheel GT S-Series, the range shows that it gets 16 to 25 miles. I think there's a very obvious reason that they didn't show that in their presentation, because one-wheel presentations are always the best parts about their new boards. Before this board came out, I was predicting a one-wheel that had a lower weight, a lower battery capacity, but potentially higher voltage to account for all of the VESC and ADV related stuff that's been coming out that is Onewheel's main competition. And I also expected it to be a lower center of gravity and probably come in at a lower price than the GT because of the less range and higher voltage, just sort of like how the Pint was to the XR, where you had a little bit more torque and the board was smaller and lighter and a little bit less overall powerful, but it was able to keep up because it had a lower price. And as you can understand from my prediction, it was most of the way there, but having the price point at $3,200 is a real shock, and that just makes the board almost incomprehensible for me. So from my point of view, there are really just two ways to look at this whole release. One way you could look at it is that the GT S-Series is the most powerful one-wheel type device that has ever hit the market. The other way you could look at it is by looking at it from a statistical point of view. At least that's what I believe. If we look at its performance per dollar, I guess performance per volt as well, as well as top speed per volt. We'll take a look at these graphs now. So here is the one-wheel model performance that you're supposedly going to get out of your board per dollar that you're going to spend. Clearly the XR is the highest performance per dollar board at the moment, and I put in $1,000 because that's on the high end of what you can get an XR for today off of Craigslist or eBay or Facebook Marketplace. So that's the price that I'm going to be using, since I think it's on the higher side. The next chart we're going to look at is the nosedive speed compared to the voltage of the board. And one wheels have had a trend for a while. This might just be because of the constant voltage that we've had for quite a long time, but generally 0.38 to 0.4 is about the number that you would expect to see. If the GT S series follows this trend and is 113 volts, that means we're looking to have a nosedive speed of around 44 miles an hour, which is insane. But I also don't think it's that impressive considering all of the other boards that are coming out that are already letting you push into the 30 miles an hour, like the ADV, as well as other VESC-based boards that are easily pushing into the higher 30s. So having something at 44 miles an hour is scary, but not terribly impressive to me, because people who are going to be going that fast are going to know how to pull out of a nosedive. They're not going to be able to run that out. And people who nosedive at that speed might just not live to tell the tale. So that summarizes basically the top speed to volt. But now let's move on to the chart that I think is the most important when we're comparing the one-wheel models like this. This last chart is pushback to voltage, which will tell us how much extra room Future Motion has given us over or under the 50% mark. Most people will attribute a low pushback to volt score as being similar to the Pint, where it was very capable of traveling 20 miles an hour, but it's difficult to achieve because of its very early pushback warning. A high pushback to volt scenario is similar to the XR, where the board will let you travel up to around 17.5 miles an hour before you would notice pushback. This allows the XR to still achieve the highest score yet. From what we can see here, the S clearly stands for safety, as the GT-S series is the lowest score yet, noticeably lower than the Pint. Surprisingly, this also sheds light to the fact that the Pint X is pretty much the perfect 50% mark for when pushback starts to how much torque the board has. So it is 0.25 is pretty much exactly 50%. The GT actually shows that it is better than the Pint X for this specific metric because of how the rankings come out. But the GT, which isn't unlocked, is somehow the second best, while its successor is now the worst one in the category. And from someone who likes to go fast, I regularly cruise at 24, 25. I mean, my top speed on my GT is probably 28 somewhere. This is frustrating to me because the last thing we need is for pushback to come in way early. Like, if I'm going to be able to push the board to 35 miles an hour, I'm going to want to be able to push the board to 35, hell, 40 miles an hour if that's what the board is capable of. Because the riders are adapting to every board that comes out. So you can't just adapt every new board to the current state of riders, because you're always going to be pushing for the next thing, and it just means new boards every like 2 years, if that. Keep in mind, I'm under the point of view that the XR is the 100% best board ever released by Future Motion. I've ridden it for the longest. I recently had to take it apart to hub swap my GT, which was not fun for me, but it is the most versatile and just overall, like from weight to speed to everything else, having the highest performance per volt is super important to me because it made me feel like I could push the board really hard and I wasn't restricted. And especially now that you're able to VESC them and put your own batteries in them and have pretty much no pushback if you don't want it, and you get to know the battery characteristics and how the motor responds and how the firmware responds to any sort of movement you make. You don't have to have pushback once you're an experienced rider. And I think that many people need pushback because I will say that I probably did not have the best riding technique until I was 2,000 miles in, 1,500 miles in, something like that. But to be a pro rider is to understand the board in and out, understand the feeling and just how it will react under every circumstance. And as soon as I hopped on a GT, about 2 months ago I got my GT, I was already pushing it harder than the XR because I could feel it. I could feel the extra torque and I knew that it was capable of balancing me. So therefore, at the end of the day, is the GT S series really worth it? I totally think that comes down to what you're looking for on a board and how much you're willing to spend, and I guess just how open you are to the current like DRM related stuff and repairability and everything, because all of that is really important to me, and that pretty much makes a GT S series pretty much a no-go for me. It is way too expensive for the performance. It is more restrictive than the Pint in terms of speed, and if you just want to have any board that's better than the GT right now, the ADV is already there, coming in at a much lower price, like $700 cheaper, and already being almost 30 miles an hour, which is kind of a scary amount of speed from my perspective. Like, I go that fast all the time, but it is scary. So, yeah, if you're the type of person to just want something that works, that's easy, that has the Future Motion custom shaping, and you got to use their haptic buzz and the new version of the app and no rewheel or anything, then sure, go ahead, get a GTS series, spend, take out a small loan of $1 million, if you will, and go for it. I'm not going to have a problem with anyone riding it. I'm going to be excited to try it, honestly, just to see how different it feels, but I'm not going to buy one myself just because of all of these different reasons. I might buy the foot pads. If the foot pads are comfortable, then they might be a have to, but we'll see. But yeah, that kind of wraps up this video, so thank you for watching. Adios.